My experience with open source started when I joined a small startup company based in Edinburgh. The project was created by the company and was developed only by the employees. So it was not the typical open source community and governance, but it was enough for me to realize that this is what I'd like to do in professional planning future. I started with documentation, writing workshops, doing simple configuration tasks, and with the time I was migrating to more complicated issues. I started doing reviews, helping the community and helping new members to join.
I started with open source predominantly as a consumer of it and out of pure interest, going through a source code of the Linux kernel and wanting to see how things work. My first ever open source contribution was to a Dropbox interfacing library for Perl. However, the first open source project to which I have contributed more than just a handful of patches is Kubernetes.
My first open source project was Openstack. I made a contribution to Horizon, their user interface. Dead silence. Nobody reviewed my code, no merge. I happened to go to their conference about a month later, and what did I do? I beep people, I ping people, I said, please take a look. And it did get merged by the end of the week, but it taught me something. I want to review people's code promptly, give feedback compassionately, not snuff out anyone's passion, and make it a win-win for all of us.
What was my first open source project? Well, let me think. I have to go all the way back to 1996. And back in those days, we didn't have fancy Windows components like we do now. But what we did have was this great thing called Openstack that no one could afford. So my first foray into open source projects that I helped create was a window manager called Window Maker. And inside of there was a component set, so you can click on buttons. So think about how like the Mac OS desktop, you can click on icons on there today, or the dock. So creating something like that was my first open source contribution.
My journey with the open source started when I became part of VMware. How I get started, I first start looking at GitHub repository. I noticed that the community is active, even though that at that time I didn't quite understand what they have been talking about. That's why I get in contact with one of the community members. One of the working group leads set up a dedicated meeting with me to explain me in details this issue and all the corner cases. In a day, I already had my list of baby issue to start working with. I could say that I was impressed from the community, how they embrace the newcomers and how they handle their human resource.